It's late August season and there's a lot of harvesting to be done. So in this video, it is all about harvesting some medicinal herbs that I planted earlier on in the season. We're going to be touching on yarrow, mullein, mint, some oregano, and maybe even propagating a lot more of these so I can have more of them to harvest for next year. Let's go. What's going on, my plant peoples? I am the ADHD gardener, where I use gardening, houseplants, and humor as a much needed form of mental health therapy, sobriety, and learning how to use our garden as a skills developing tool in order to navigate this crazy ass world with ADHD. And I have a lot of my tools ready. We are about to go around in the garden and start harvesting some plants. A lot of these plants and herbs that I'm going to be harvesting is for medicinal use purposes only. So I would highly suggest learning a lot about that medicinal herb that we're going to be talking about on your own added information. I did do a video on what I'm planting. I'll list it right up here. I'm not going to be harvesting all of them because I do not have a lot of them right now available, to be harvesting. But the ones I do have, we're going to be talking about. If you're curious about mullein and its cough or expectorant properties, then stay tuned for later on in the video, because I'm actually trying to go smoke this. And they said it is smokable, and that's what I'm going to try to do. And let's see what happens with it. Right behind me is the mullein plant. Now I have two different mullein plants. I only needed two for myself because I'm only one person, and one mullein leaf is large, it's huge in itself. So if you're only going to be for just your family household, you're probably only going to need two plants of these. But if you decide to start selling them, like I may perhaps do next year, then I'm going to be wanting to plant them more. But for now, we're going to be harvesting the leaves from one, but the other mullein plant, the whole entire plant by itself. So for now, right here, this mullein plant can get at least 3 feet wide, and when it's starting to flower, it can get super tall, like 5-6 feet. But right now it is not flowering, so this is a perfect time to start harvesting the leaves. When you're starting to harvest any type of your medicinal herbs, you want to be grabbing the most tender part of the plant in itself, especially if you're harvesting the leaves. You do not want to harvest the older leaves because those leaves have a tendency of being a little more bitter. Another reason why you do not want to grab the older leaves is because some of them can be damaged or diseased. And that's because sometimes those older leaves are, one, old, and also those older leaves are touching the ground, which are more susceptible to disease, pests, and so on and so forth. We do not want that. The mullein leaf right here is a perfect example of what you do not want to harvest, because it's starting to develop a lot of disease qualities in the leaves. The newer leaves and the most tender leaves are the ones that you're going to be picking because, one, they have all the most medicinal qualities to it, but also they're not infected with disease or pests, but there is no woody stems on them. So not every plant is going to have a woody stem, but a majority of whatever medicinal plant you're going for can have that very same woody stem. We don't want that. If you plan on keeping this herb or whatever plant that you're growing for, if you want to keep it for next year, then you do not want to harvest the whole plant. You want to take at least a third of that plant, because you want to have it, give the plant enough time to bounce back from that. If you harvest too much of that plant, let's just say maybe 50% or more, it's going to have a harder time to bounce back. Will it with 50% of the plant gone? It could. It will, because I've done it and it has. But you don't want to take that chance, which is why we're just going to be going for a third to a little shy of a half of that plant. Can you get out of my garden? Thank you. Here we go. You do not want to be eating a bunch of bugs, so make sure you thoroughly wash your mullein before you start drying it. Next thing you know, you're eating aphids or any other type of bugs that you will find in your garden. Now you're eating it. I love to just hang my herbs and just air dry them over time because I like to see them. But if you are pressed for time or you have access to a dehydrator, then that is perfectly fine for all your herbs. You have hang dry or dehydrator. Have you ever looked at the yarrow flowers? Yo, those flowers are so pretty. They really are. And fun fact, we're going to be harvesting the flowers. We are going to be harvesting the leaves as well. But yes, to the flowers for this plant. I'm super excited about them because you can actually, use those very same flowers along with the leaves for a great type of tea. Now, remember when I was talking about in the mullein about woody stems? This definitely applies to the yarrow. Yarrow, the older leaves definitely have a woody stem to them. So we're not going to be harvesting that. You could if you needed to, absolutely. But this plant does lose its medicinal value if you're going for the woody plants and the leaves. So do not go for that. We're going for the most tender parts. As far as the flowers obviously are not tender, but the stem that it's on is a little bit on the woody side. So pick and choose when you're going to be harvesting the stems for your teas. And same thing for your poultice also. I may use the little leaves though, because those are rather on the tender side. The stem not so much, but the flowers, yes. This plant is not old enough like the other flowering one because there's no flower on it. This one has not gotten woody at all, so most of these leaves are tender on its own, but just in case, I'm going to be harvesting them from the top. Now, this is going to be interesting. Remember, we're only taking 1/3 of the plant. I'm leaving the bottom behind, leaving that alone. That's what's touching, you know, the ground. I don't want that, so I'm just going to be trying to take from the top if I can. Now, I would not recommend doing what I'm about to do, which is just going boop and chopping it just like that. Take a rubber band and tie the ends of it. This is for if you want to like hang it and dry it like I'm going to be doing. There is another method of drying it I will talk about later on, but is dehydrating it. You can definitely dehydrate it as well, but right here, definitely what I needed. The next flowering plant we have here is the calendulas. Now those are some cute little plants. They tend to flower all the way into the fall time, which is pretty sweet. There are multiple different varieties of calendulas. However, I've noticed in my research is that there's only about 2 different types that really are used for medicinal purposes. C. officinalis and resina. The leaves are edible, but the most potent part of the entire plant is the flower head itself. You want the flower petals, but also the actual whole entire flower head. They always say when picking flowers to ideally pick them in the morning time after the morning dew has passed. You don't want them kind of wet. But you also do not want to pick them in the afternoon. I forget what the reason was for, but you know what? Hey, here we are. When picking calendula flowers, you want them to be fully opened or just about to open up all the way. In this opening stage, you do not want them to look like they've already been opened for like forever. If the flower petals are starting to die off, do not pick those. They probably have less potent, medicinal value in it. So we're looking for the open flowers, the flowers that have recently opened, and those are the flower heads that we're going to be drying off. You can always strip the stems and use them for, your tea as well, but we're aiming for the heads. What you do not want to do. Now, calendula plants have a tendency of getting some type of powdery or downy mildew on their leaves if you have a very damp and humid type of weather. Not cool. This plant right here is perfectly green, no mildew on it and nothing, so that is why I am picking from that. It's a pretty plant though, I gotta say. The next plant is oregano. Now I have 2 different types of oregano plants. The question is, are they the same? Are they not the same? They're both actually definitely oregano, but I guess they grow differently. One of them just kind of grows up and then spreads. The other one is like a pure runner. So I'm just gonna harvest both of them. It doesn't matter about that one. If I know that oregano kills infections, I've literally seen that through a microscope on a video. Now that's what I'm harvesting the oregano for, is to hopefully eventually find a way to extract the oils out of the oregano. Not only of course just for cooking, but for medicinal reasons. So I'm gonna need a lot of oregano to be harvesting. So I'm gonna be harvesting both different type of varieties. Oregano is super easy to propagate too. Because of these little runners, most of those plant stems have a lot of the root system already on it. So it's super easy to just propagate them. All we have to do is just kind of like cut a piece off that has a little bit of the root system, and we could totally just propagate it. Once again, I'll just be tying a rubber band around the oregano and just hang them to dry. Remember, you can always dehydrate them if you have a dehydrator. We've come to the mint section. There is tons of mint growing here. It is growing like wildfire. And when I say that mint is invasive, it is invasive because it spreads like crazy. It has completely taken over this garden bed. I also have a different type of variety of mint. This is called either peppermint or chocolate mint. Not really too sure, but it is way more potent than that other one. I'm thinking that's spearmint. This plant grows like crazy. All these root systems, or the stems I should say, just spread like wildfire. It will also just kind of replant itself. It's kind of like air layering, where this plant, all it needs to do is just touch some soil and it will grow right all over again. So the fact that we have to cut down this plant just to maintain it is exactly what you're going to be doing for a long time, as long as you have mint, any type of mint, inside of your garden. Now that we don't have to worry about dividing or propagating, we're just about controlling its spread. So that means harvesting very, very frequently. Some of this I'm just going to pull out of the ground directly because it can withstand it, because it spreads on its own. See what it's doing? Look at that. I'm about to chop this whole thing down, and no worries, because it spread itself all the way over here. What does this smell like? Smells like a dried plant. No time like the present to go try this out, right? Yo, it's actually nice. It's not bad. At least like in this form. I mean, I did say in the beginning of the year in that first video, I really wanted to see if I can smoke something that would not really harm my lungs, because I am a cigarette smoker. So if I'm trying to get off cigarettes, then why not switch to Mullein? Now I wonder, let me know down in the comments below if you've tried Mullein before. How long does it take, or how many times would you have to smoke it in order for you to start getting that expectorant up out of your lungs? I'm curious to know, because obviously I am going to be doing it in tea form. Also, this is just one way of taking it. You can always use, if you don't want to smoke, that is all good, because obviously I'm going to be trying it out in tea form as well. So there's always multiple ways of consumption. But so far, so good. I hope you enjoyed this video and you got some great information out of it. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you smoked Mullein before? Have you ever tried harvesting a lot of your medicinal herbs? What are you using for? Are you using it in a tea? Are you using it in a poultice? Or are you using it in smokable form? Let me know. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to smash that like button. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, on TikTok. I'm on all platforms. As usual, until the next episode, where you and me are both going to be growing our happiness one plant at a time, one day at a time. God bless you all. Until the next episode. Peace.